Okay, good afternoon everyone and welcome to the Strategy and Resources Policy Committee for the 19th of May 2025. So if we start with agenda item 1, which is welcome introductions and safety information. Bless you. First of all, I'd like to welcome members of the committee to the meeting, and just to note that following the annual accounts on the 13th of May, Councillors Classic, Renard and McAllister are new members of the committee, replacing Councillors Goots, Whippington and Malik respectively, and Councillor Classic is the new Vice Chair, replacing Councillor Goose. Welcome. Also, just to mention that the meeting is being webcast. However, the final item on the agenda is concerning 2 commercial property disposers, and as such is exempt and will be considered and determined in private session. Just to also outline the emergency evacuation procedure, in the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the room calmly via the lobby and the main front door of City Hall. Turn right and walk down the ramp towards the cathedral. The assembly point is in front of the cathedral. Okay, agenda item number 2 is apologies for absence and substitution. Apologies have been received from Councillor Tom Wenard and Councillor Zoe Peat is substituting. Welcome, Zoe. Are there any other apologies or substitutions? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Can I ask committee members if there are any interest to declare in relation to the items of business on today's agenda? No? Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 4 is minutes of the previous meeting. I would like to move the minutes of the meeting of the Strategy and Resources Policy Committee held on 14th of April as a correct record. Can I ask for a seconder? I think we're probably to have Heather. Would you like to? One of you must have been at the meeting. Ellie, you, Tom. Okay. Annie and Tom have jointly seconded the minutes of the previous meeting. So can I ask the committee if they are content to confirm the minutes as a correct record? So those of you who are present, can you see indicate if you are happy to approve the minutes? Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 5 is Chair's announcements. I have no Chair's announcements at this point. So we'll move straight on to agenda item number 6, which is the public forum. We have up to 30 minutes available for the public forum. The questions and replies were circulated to committee members and published on the website in advance of the meeting. Each questioner is permitted to ask up to 2 oral supplementary questions in total, if they wish. A supplementary question must rise directly out of one of their original questions or a reply, i.e. entirely fresh questions on other subjects are not permitted. Depending on the content of the supplementary questions, it may be necessary for a follow-up reply to be sent to the questioner. 21 public questions have been received for this meeting. So I'll start with question number 1, which is from Jen Smith. Jen, do you have a follow-up question?
I do, thank you. So my follow-up question is for number 1. I came across a 2021 employment tribunal where the council had wrongly accused a member of staff of making offensive tweets. And you've just settled out of court for systemic spying on centre parents who were using Twitter, so that's at least 2 cases. So does Bristol City Council immediately delete all legal paperwork, cases, court findings or tribunal rulings, or just the ones using social media? Thank you.
As far as I know, we don't order, the answer out to the previous question, we don't order level of detail on individual cases. I don't know if there's anything officers can add to the follow-up question. Tim.
Thank you, Chair. I think the specific question was asking whether we automatically delete things relating to tribunal cases. The short answer to that is no, we don't. We will keep all legal judgments, decisions, relevant papers relating to tribunals and other court cases in line with our retention policy.
Okay, thank you. Jen, you have one more follow-up question. Do you want to use that for any of your other questions or for this one?
Hello. Yeah, no, you haven't actually answered my first question then, because like if you do keep those, why haven't you answered my question? This isn't a supplementary question. This is like, if you keep that detail, why have you not answered my public forum question?
We don't record the data in the format that the questionnaire has asked. So the question has asked about, specific categories of social media. We don't record information at that level of detail.
Okay, I think to avoid confusion, Jen, clearly the question was about a specific type of data has been recorded. What I'll do, I'll ask for a response that provides a bit more clarity in respect to your original question, and then I'll look at what other information we can provide over and above that.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So, have I got that up there? Yeah, so going by the answer, can you just scroll so I can see what the answer was? So the council, okay, so how does emails discussing the clothes I wear and downloaded wedding photographs help improve your delivery of services?
They do not.
So, like,
sorry,
why did you do
Jen,
it?
you asked the question. I gave you the answer. In my opinion, they do not.
Thank you for your very extensive and brilliantly explained answer. Everything is just so much clearer. Thank you.
You're welcome. Questions 4 and 5 are from Graham Morris. I can't see Councillor Graham Morris. Questions 6, 7 and 8 are from Mark Weston, not attending. Questions 9, 10, 11, Councillor Jonathan Hooker, not attending. Questions 12, 13 and 14 are Suzanne Audrey, not attending. Oh, sorry, Suzanne, I had you down as not attending. That's because I can't read properly. Thank you, Suzanne. Do you have a follow-up question?
It's kind of disappointing, really, the responses that we get. But the implication here is that there aren't really any problems with the council's FOI system, and that's not true. And at the moment, we're still only have an unsatisfactory compliance rate, and we're not reporting all the information that we should report on the website. So my question is, what are we doing to get that response rate better and to comply with the reporting requirements?
Okay, there is additional work being put in. Our level of response rate is still short of where the target is, although it is higher than it's been since 2018 and 19. All I can say is that we're continuing to look at how we can improve the process, because clearly it's not where we would like it to be at the moment, as is clear by the fact we haven't hit the target in terms of the response rate, as it's covered in one of the reports today.
Thank you. Look forward to hearing how you get on with that, because it has been stuck around about 75% for a long time. Second question actually relates a bit more to a question that Dan has asked, in the sense that we're...
Sorry, Suzanne, because this is a follow-up to your question.
Right. Well, each service area is responsible for deciding which emails they keep. So it sounds as though the Mayor's office was allowed to say, well, we won't keep these emails, we'll just delete them all. It seems rather odd that it happens that way, and I just wondered, have I misinterpreted that, or do we say to people that have sent dodgy emails, you decide which ones you want to keep and which ones to delete?
Well, I can't comment on the Mayor's office because obviously I never worked in the Mayor's office. All I say is that we are looking at the process we have now, and the process is that we should be, where there are emails that reflect something referring to a decision or of a particular importance that need to be retained, there is a process being put in place to ensure that that is downloaded to the appropriate format for storage of information, because at the present email is not considered to be one of the standard ways of storing information. It's a communication method rather than a storage method, but we are looking at ways to ensure that where the information is potentially of import, that it should be kept in either in SharePoint or one of the other systems that the council uses for storage.
It's who does that that's the important question.
Okay, question number 15 is from Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you for your response, Councillor Dyer. It suggests that councillors are happy that the Port of Bristol, in which we hold a 10% stake, has given thousands of pounds to the Conservative Party and pro-Brexit causes. I'm sure you'll agree that none of these donations reflects the political intentions of most people in this city.
Andrew, are you asking the question?
I'm getting to the question.
All right, thank you.
Don't worry, sorry. But it's quite a good one as well. But the port isn't worried that it's acting against the interests of its minority shareholder. We have a councillor on the port board, but his voice is not allowed to be heard. It's a corporate governance stinker. Such arrogance can be rewarded. The port is going through a generational change of leadership, which is always a risky time for investors. Therefore, could you commit that this council examines its holding in the port and, in light of the contempt shown to the citizens of Bristol over the years, look at selling its stake?
We review our holdings in all sorts of commercial operations. The Port of Bristol is no different from that. If we believe it is no longer in the council's interest to continue to hold a stake in any of those commercial organisations, yes, we'll certainly look at what actions to take to no longer be holding that.
Okay, and just one other question. You're happy then that, I nearly said Lawrence Fox, I meant Liam Fox got 10 grand, 1 grand of which should have come to us in 2004?
No, I'm not happy. So questions 16, 17, 18 are from Joe Banch, who's not attending, but I did say that I would give a verbal response to question number 16 from Joe Banks. So in answer to that question, which has kind of been touched upon already, is I believe we have made best efforts to ensure that the report more generally and the proposers do cover what councillors were looking for. However, I think the important aspect of this that is sometimes being overlooked is that we should not be using emails as a form of long-term storage. That we should be ensuring that we follow the correct process to ensure that any information is stored in such a way as that it is used in the council's identified means of data storage, whether that be SharePoint or some other system that has been identified as being a suitable way of storing information. Move on to question 19, 20 and 21, with from Dan Ackroyd, who is attending. Dan, do you have you have 2 follow-ups for your 3 questions?
Yeah, they're both related to question 19, which is about the emails in the Mayor's office. First question, although retention of decision-making records is one aspect of why emails need to be kept, another aspect is to be able to hold inquiries, which includes being able to investigate what events happened and in exactly what sequence during an emergency. What training were the people in the Mayor's office given related to the rules about which records, particularly emails, need to be kept so that they're available for inquiries?
Okay, well, as stated before, I didn't work in the Mayor's office, but I can ask officers to give you a response on that. to see what records we kept of what training was taken.
Okay, thank you. So I'll get a written response to that. Is that correct?
Do you have another follow-up question?
Yes. Will the emails from the week leading up to the Barton House evacuation be available for the inquiry, which was a Green Party pledge that they made before the election?
At the moment, until we see how that is going to be taking place, I can't answer that question because that would be up to whatever investigation is undertaken. It's not up to me to preempt the terms of that investigation. Well, my question is that depending on what the inquiry decides they need to be able to see, then if we have it available, we'll make it available. But I don't know what's available and what's not available. Dan, I cannot answer a question. Okay, well, next time I'll make up an answer for you. That'll probably be more satisfactory. Can I just, I am just going to have to say to this, you're asking a question about what information will be made available. What I'll do, I'll ask officers to give you a fuller response because you're clearly not happy with my response, so I'll ask officers to respond to you. Okay, we'll now move on to public statements. We have 5 public statements which have been received for this meeting as follows. Statement number 1 is for Jen Smith, who is attending. So, Jen, please read your statement.
The Council's communications retention policy states that there are no specific legal implications arising from this report. This is not the case. I have had no end of trouble with the Council's communications. Your corporate strategy alignment on this is far from taking accountability and showing integrity. When I made a subject access request some time back, I only received this after complaining to the LGO. The results were heavily redacted as part of your cover-up and are now going to be unavailable. The Council refused to send any of it to my solicitor. It refused to send it to its own solicitor during legal action I took. I had to send my own redacted data back to the Council solicitor. The request for the information from my solicitor was made over a year before Marvin Rees left office. What the data did reveal is emails showing extensive systematic spying by 20 people. After 2 years of legal action being dragged out by the champions at City Hall, the case was settled out of court last month, although I still don't have my requested data. You refused an independent investigation, you refused to play fair with legal procedures, you refused to apologise or offer assurances that it would not happen again. I believe 7 Send families were spied on, so I think every family in Bristol should submit a subject access request to Bristol City Council urgently. They spy on you and they won't stop.
Public statement number 2 is from Suzanne Audrey. Suzanne?
Yes, well, my statement was about the compliance statistics, and I won't go into all that because we've actually been, I'd like to thank the officer that did actually provide the information that we had. But I do want to say that it does look like some of these responses just say the information is not held. And clearly it's not held sometimes because it's been deliberately deleted, which causes a problem. One of the responses I had is that the council recognises that emails are information. So when you talk about information storage, clearly emails by especially senior officers are information and would be required and could help with legal proceedings. So I really think we need to keep a tight view on this, and thank you for anything you can do to improve it.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Statement number 3 is from Joanna Booth. Statement number 4 is Dan Ackroyd. Dan?
The legal department in this council does not seem to care about acting fairly or acting to uphold the public interest. The legal department acts to push the law as far as it will go in favour of protecting politicians, including giving special considerations and allowing councillors to fail to declare their interests. Anyone who doesn't like this situation can pay for a judicial review if they have the spare cash. Councillor Dyer, you have shown zero interest in making the FOI service in BCC actually function. I've been coming to this committee the past year and you've shown zero interest. In particular, you've allowed the legal department to delay the enforcement notice from the ICO for over a year through the glacially slow appeal process the council is making. You seem entirely comfortable with how this legal department operates. Don't you realise how bad this is making you look? Both yourself as council leader and the reputation of the council. There was a Green Party pledge of holding an inquiry into why the Barton House evacuation was so shambolic. I cannot see how this inquiry can be held if the emails have been deleted. This is indefensible.
Okay, the public statement number 5 was from Councillor Christine Townsend. We'll take that statement as read. That is the final public statement. We'll now move on to the next business item, which is agenda item 7, which is the annual business report. There are no decisions to be taken on this report, which is for information. I would like to invite Ian Hurd as Policy Committee Coordinator to briefly outline the report.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, this report is purely for information. The report sets out the membership of the committee for the year ahead, notes the appointment of yourself as Chair and Councillor Classic as Vice Chair of the committee. The report also sets out the terms of reference of the committee and the meeting dates for the year ahead. And finally, asks the committee to note the appointment of Councillor Patrick McAllister as Chair of the Finance Subcommittee and Councillor Jonathan Hucker as Vice Chair. But essentially for information.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask the committee to note that report? Thank you. We now move on to agenda item number 8, which is the 2024-25 Period 12 Finance Provisional Outturn Report. This report presents information and analysis on the Council's 4-year financial performance against the approved 24-25 budget, as well as highlighting the movement from the previous period 10 4-year forecast, as reported to the committee on 17th of March. The report also updates the committee about the delivery of planned savings for the 24-25 financial year and sets out the budget management reporting principles for the 25-26 financial year. Finally, it also includes details of officer key decisions for noting. I would like to invite Sarah Chokovitz, Head of Finance Management, to briefly outline the report. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So as at the 31st of March 2025, the provisional closing financial position on the General Fund being reported was a service variation of £32.6 million overspend. As outlined in the detail of the report, the overspend position, as it has throughout the year, remains significantly influenced by the positions in the Children's and Young People's Committee that's outturned with an adverse position of £23.8 million, with a key driver around that being the pressure on the internal and external placements of children in care. This is offset by corporately held budgets, resulting in a net budget overspend of £14.7 million. The outturn overspend position has then been funded through one-off distribution of the retrospective business rates. Within the position, there were planned savings totalling £50.2 million, against which £38.9 million, or 77% of those savings, have been delivered. Within the HRA is currently presenting at P12 a net underspend of £4.5 million. However, there are a number of adjustments that can't be made to the position in P12 and go through as part of the main statement of accounts. We anticipate those to be an estimated £10.1 million, which would move the position to an adverse outturn of £5.5 million, and that will be funded through the HRA General Reserve. The biggest driver of the adverse position on the HRA is due to the fire alarm and fire safety works that have been required in the financial year. The dedicated schools grant ring-fenced account has outturned with an overspend of £25.5 million. When added to the cumulative deficit brought forward, the closing deficit at the end of 24-25 is £84.1 million. The high needs block, covering the cost of EHCPs, financial payments and placements for children with high SEND needs, remains the area causing the most financial pressure. Both public health and the harbour accounts have expenditure within funding availabilities. The capital programme is underspent against the revised budget by 39.4 million, with the project and programme variances outlined within the Appendix A1B. The report also outlines in sections 8 the position on debt outstanding and in section 9 the position on the council's reserves. And as the chair has identified, we've also got the additional key decisions in there and the financial reporting timelines and budget management framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. I now open it up to the committee for any questions or comments, starting with Tom.
Thank you. Just a quick one off the bat, which is in terms of the capital underspend. So it's quite a substantial capital underspend, and I can see that we do have some details on how we've ended up there, but it would be helpful to know. I think for the past few years we've continued to have a capital underspend, and it would be good to talk about why that's continued. So a bit more detail there would be appreciated.
So I think it's probably worth saying that the capital outturn position is one of the most significant spend levels that we've had in recent years on capital. It was an extremely ambitious capital programme that was set at the beginning of the financial year, with a number of factors, including around the HRA needing to reprioritise for fire safety works in the year. That has meant slippage within the programme.
All right, thank you very much for that. The second one would be in terms of the business rates that were mentioned, the one-off retrospective business rates. I would like just a little bit more detail on that, because that seems to be quite a big factor into why this is balanced out. And at the risk of being slightly oblique, there's sort of one-off investments that we won't expect to see again ever, and then there's one-off that we can't guarantee but still a possibility. Is this very much a sort of, right, this is one and done, or could we expect similar business rates in the future? Because otherwise I think we might have a problem in some of our budgeting.
So I think the first thing to say is the pressures were outlined quite early on during the financial year, and therefore as we've built the budget for 25-26, a lot of those pressures were taken into consideration quite robustly through the budget build, and there is a significant amount of investment in the 25-26 budget that takes that into account. In terms of the business rates retrospective, that is one-off funding in terms of the amount that we receive, but one of the opportunities highlighted through the budget was the continuation of approximately 5 million a year, and that is built into part of the savings programme.
Also, just to add to that, Tom, as well, and Sarah can correct me if I get this wrong, one of the things we've also had to account for next year's budget is a change in the way business rates are being accredited or being assigned. So we're actually facing a drop of somewhere in the region of 20 million a year or so in our business rates in forthcoming years, which obviously is going to be quite painful. So I think business rates have been done differently between different councils. In the previous few years, we've been beneficiaries of that, when other councils have not benefited so much. Now it's turning around the other way, and other councils are probably going to do better and we're not so much. I think that it's a simplistic version of putting it.
So there'll be a national reset of business rates, which means that the growth that we've accumulated as a region will be impacted. There is currently consultation underway with central government in terms of how they're going to set that up and what that's going to look like.
And that forms part of the submission we made to comprehensive spending review as well. Any more follow-up questions, Tom?
No, I think that covers it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Peat.
Thank you. So my first question relates to the HRA. Obviously, with St Jude's, 4 out of 5 blocks pose a fire risk due to compartmentation failures, poorly rated doors and smoke extraction system flaws, plus an additional 8.5 million due to supervision and management delays, such as maintaining fire alarms. I suppose my question is, in regards to Wake and Watch, why are we having such additional costs due to, a lack of providing these services?
In terms of the Waking Watch, that comes at a cost because of the fire risk issues, and until the capital works are done to ensure that the fire safety works are in place, we need to maintain the Waking Watch, and that comes at quite a premium.
Okay. I suppose I'm just concerned that we're perhaps, falling behind on some of our contractual and statutory duties, and that this is not only just affecting residents, but also potentially causing, a burning hole in our pockets as a council as well.
Sarah and Nick, perhaps.
So I think it's worth noting that there is a significant amount of fire safety work going on in terms of the requirements. There is a programme around that with a significant amount of work being done. But this was an emerging issue following the fire safety issues identified. In order to maintain safety for our residents, that's why it's been prioritised.
Thank you.
And I think just to add, just in terms of the 25-26 budget, you would have seen that there's significant focus in that budget on ensuring that we're investing in the quality and safety of existing tenants' homes. So we agree with you that those works are a priority. I think it's right that in the meantime, though, we ensure that we invest in mitigation measures such as Waking Watch, whilst we're waiting for those works to be carried out.
I think what I'll just add to that as well is with the changes in the regulatory structure, particularly related to social housing, that we have had to change our focus to ensure that we do deliver to the standards that are set by the regulator of social housing. As you'll be aware, we are currently under a C3 judgment because the previous failure to ensure our council housing was kept up to the standards expected. And as a result, we are investing more both in addressing fire safety concerns, but also in general in making sure that our council tenants are living in homes that are decent, safe, and meet the standards that the regulatory social housing regulator requires.
Thank you. My last question on this paper is in relation to the dedicated schools grant, which is simply that how are we making sure that we meet our legal obligations to these pupils whilst also making sure that it's financially viable?
So within the dedicated schools grant programme of works, there is a deficit management plan that is looking at prioritising on outcomes in a financially sustainable way, tied to the safety valve agreement that we've got in place with the DFE, and that's the focus on making us financially sustainable in the longer term.
I just want to make sure that the pupils aren't losing out because we have to make savings.
No, that deficit management plan is very much about improving outcomes whilst managing the financial position at the same time. So it is dual-fold, not just about savings.
Anna, do you want to come in on this as well?
Well, yes, just to add that obviously our responsibilities to provide come first, and our legal responsibilities. So we do need to meet them. You'll be aware that there's a lot of pressures. And we have got a number of timeliness questions, but our responsibilities to provide come first. The deficit management plan is how we manage to do that over a period of time. But yes, we need to make sure we stick within our legal duties.
I think it's fair to say this is something that goes back at least to 2014, when similarly with the regulator of social housing, new standards were brought in, and all three of those new standards had good intentions, and what they were trying to do were very supportive of. They didn't come with any clear additional funding in order to help us meet those standards. And as a result, I think the deficit in the DSG has grown each and every year. We are, to be blunt, awaiting government to come forward with a plan, not just for Bristol, but for almost 2/3 of our local authorities. And I think the deficit at the moment across all local authorities is somewhere in the region of well over $1 billion, perhaps as much as $2 billion. So we are waiting for a solution from our central government. Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, Chair. Following on quite nicely from that answer, actually, I had another question about the DSG. Sarah, you mentioned that huge influence this has on our budget pressures, as we're all aware. And I am wondering if we have any indication of the future of what the DfE is going to come forward with, given how much of an important issue that is for our ability to set a balanced budget.
Do you want to speculate, Sarah?
Not particularly. It'd be a bit crystal ball gazing, I'm afraid. I don't think we've had anything formal through that I'm aware of, no.
No, that is it's pretty much what I expected. It's frustrating we haven't really been given much more of insight into what the future of that sector is going to look like. What
I will say, Councillor McAllister, is, and no, we have not been given any clear indication about what might happen, but I think if you talk to education leads in all local authorities, I think the expectation is that there will need to be at least some extension of the current statutory override, unless because the only alternative is one, either local authority after local authority after local authority having to issue section 114 notices, or a massive input of public funding in to reduce the deficits in the multiple DSG accounts across those local authorities. But we need an answer very soon. And I would expect it to come via the comprehensive spending review.
Thank you. I had another quick question about just some of the phrasing in the outturn report, please. On point 1.4, it does talk about how if unavoidable pressures are identified in year that can't be mitigated at a directorate level, then collective ownership of those issues is taken. Could I just clarify what that means in practice? I'm a bit concerned that maybe risks removing direct responsibility and accountability from individual directors or departments, but if that's not how it works in practice, I'm happy to be reassured.
No, so in practice, directors are expected to manage within their cash limits. If there is something that is of significant import that comes out through that director cannot manage, then we would take a corporate level view of it across the whole council, and that would be something that is discussed initially at corporate leadership.
Thank you very much.
Okay, do you have any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you. In that case, this report has, let me just check, 14 recommendations for noting and 6 for approval. So what I'll do is I'll go through the items for noting first of all, so bear with me. So I would like to propose that the Strategy and Resources Committee notes 1. The Council's General Fund forecast outturn revenue position of a £0.2 million underspend against the budget. 2. The performance on delivery of savings as summarised in Appendix A1A and detailed in Appendix A2. 3. The Council's outturn position of a £4.5 million underspend within the housing revenue account before £10.1 million contribution to the funding of capital investment. This will result in a drawdown of £5.5 million HRA general reserve at the year end. 4. The Council's outturn position of a £25.5 million overspend in the dedicated schools grant, and this brings the carry forward deficit to £62.6 million. 5. The break-even position on public health services. 6. The break-even position on the Bristol Harbour Fund. 7. The Council's underspend of £39.4 million against the capital programme revised budget of 24-25, comprised of £32.8 million underspend on the General Fund, £6.4 million underspend on the HOA, and a £0.2 million underspend on the Bristol Harbour account. 8. The annual collection levels for council tax and business rates as set out in Section 8 of Appendix A1A. 9. The level of aged debt as of the 31st of March 2025 as set out in Section 9 of Appendix A1A. 10. The use of reserves and draft closing reserve balances as set out in section 10 in Appendix A1A. 11. The drawdown of £8.9 million of flexible use of capital receipts to support delivery of the top 5 transformation programmes in line with the approved strategy. 12. The Officer of Finance key decision number 42 dated 24th of March 2025 for the Household Support Fund 7 Local Crisis and Prevention Fund allocation for 25-26 to approve the allocation of £700,000 to the Council's Local Crisis and Prevention Fund to help circa 3,000 low-income households in crisis. 13. The Officer of Finance key decision number 43 dated the 17th of April 2025, Household Support Fund 7, free school meal vouchers for May 2025 half-term, to approve and spend £352,500 to provide free school meal vouchers for 23,500 children over the May half-term holidays. And 14, supports the incorporation of the budget management framework principles. Can I ask that the committee notes? I would now like to move that the committee approves the following 6 recommendations. 1. The transfer to or drawdown from the General Fund Reserve in order to balance the outturn position following the final statement of accounts. 2. The drawdown from the HRA Reserve in order to balance the outturn position following the final statement of accounts. 3. The transfer of the Dedicated Schools Grant in-year deficit to the Dedicated Schools Grant Reserve following the final statement of accounts. 4. The reprofiling of up to £39.4 million of the capital programme's 24-25 underspend into future years. 5. The release of £46.5 million corporate funds, including £20.3 million for inflation, £11 million for pay awards, and £10.6 million optimism buyer savings contingency, as approved in the 24-25 budget, but not initially allocated. And finally, the planned financial report timetable for 25-26. Can I ask for a seconder for those motions?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Classip. Can I ask that all those in favour show their hands? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we now move on to agenda item number 9. Change in transformation and portfolio funding 25-26. This report seeks approval of the proposed approach to funding the change in transformation portfolio for 25-26. This is a key decision as it involves spend over £500,000 and impacts on more than 2 wards. I would like to invite Tara Dillon, Head of Service Portfolios, Programmes and Projects, to briefly outline the report. Tara.
Thank you, Councillor Dyer. So this paper is seeking agreement to the total transformation fund envelope for 25-26, which is £32.5 million. The paper outlines the funding sources making up that fund, including specifically noting the reliance on the release of capital receipts in order to fund a significant proportion of that. It's worth noting within the paper that where there are firm allocations of funding given, that's in relation to business cases that have already passed through their relevant committees for sign-off. Any numbers within the paper that are estimated numbers will be subject of approval going through the formal business case approval process before those funds are released.
Thank you, Tara. Do I have any questions or comments for Tara? We also have, I should say, Hannah Woodhouse, the Executive Director for Children's, and Pete Anderson and Hugh Evans. You can also respond to the questions if necessary. Councillor Mack.
So this lays out exactly how we are spending on our transformation, what we plan to do in the next year. And we've sort of gone round and round, especially when we're talking about disposals and capital receipts, with especially the Labour group wanting to know when and what pace we're spending that. So I guess I hope that they take this opportunity now, because we always have the problem when it comes to trying to get the receipts, that we're concerned that our spending isn't going to keep up with the pace in which we're bringing the receipts in. So this says exactly what we're going to spend, and then later on we come to the disposals part of it. So I guess, and I've been chairing the property disposals working group, and that's one of the things that have come up there. So I guess what I'm trying to say is this is the opportunity to question the pace in which we are spending that flexible capital, and if there are any concerns that we're not spending it at that pace, bring it up now, rather than when we get to the other side of it of bringing the money in, because this is specifically where and how we're spending the money, and it looks like a very good plan to me, and I'm glad we're doing it.
Any more comments or questions? Councillor Peat.
Thank you. So regarding the transformation fund envelope, I just wanted to know what safeguards are in place if the asset sales don't meet projections, and could vital services be disrupted if funding gaps arise?
Sarah, do you want to respond to that one?
Yeah, I can do. Should the transformation spend be at the level identified and the disposals not be at sufficiently high level, the fallback would be to call on the general reserves, and we would have to mitigate and manage and replenish those reserves in future years. It would not impact service delivery this year.
Do you have a follow-up question? Any other questions or comments? Patrick.
Thank you. Somewhat related to the previous questions, actually. I am wondering if this is maybe giving us an incentive to dispose of property maybe more quickly or haphazardly than we otherwise might, because we're so eager to get the capital receipts to spend on these very good transformation projects. I was just wondering if the officers might be able to comment on that, please.
Tara.
So there's a transformation board has been established within the organisation, and we are tracking out on a monthly basis exactly what our burn rate is across all of the transformation programmes and projects. So therefore we should be in a position where we are confident that we are only raising the amount of assets that we actually need in order to fund the transformation this year in year.
Thank you. And so, excuse me, Chair, may I just ask for clarification on the term burn rate, please?
Sorry. So the rate at which we are spending money against our projected rate of spending money. So if things aren't being spent quite at the rate that we think, then we don't need to release as much money in year as we may forecast at the start of the year.
Councillor Mark.
Yeah, I was going to, as I say, my work on the property disposals is going to comment on that. And I think that how we deliver our services, ensuring that our services are delivering what they need to deliver and balancing our budget each year is the absolute core of what we do. Owning properties that are being used for things that are not our core services is not the core of what we do. So, and we have to balance those things. So yes, we may sometimes have to, there's one very, very clear priority, and then there's another thing that we've just got into a situation where we do own a lot of property. So no, I don't think that, I think we are prioritising what we need to prioritise in terms of making our services work and balancing our budget, and it doesn't concern me that we are making in-year sales at the pace, not a very fast pace at the moment, but that we're considering them.
Councillor Peat.
Regarding risks and dependencies, what is the contingency plan if transformation savings aren't achieved? And also, as a separate question, is potentially contractor reliance undermining long-term internal capacity?
Tara or Nick?
So in terms of the latter part of your question, in terms of the agency versus internal capacity, so we are working hard to ensure that we have the sufficient balance. So we project the total demand across the portfolio at the start of the year and seek wherever possible to meet that demand through internal capacity, whether that's permanent or fixed term contracts in that space, and only flex up using agency staff where we absolutely need to do that.
And Nick, do you want to come in as well?
Yeah, just in terms of the first question about if we're unable to deliver the savings, well, the first step that we take is to ensure that we've got the right governance in place for all of the projects and programs within the transformation program. because obviously we want to ensure that we set those projects up in the correct way and that we're delivering them in the correct way to deliver those savings. So that's the first mitigation, is good governance and oversight. It's worth saying that there is a corporate transformation board that oversees delivery of all of these projects, which I chair and members of the corporate leadership board attend each month. And that we take steps to ensure that each project is agreed at outline business case, project initiation and full business case stage, and that we track the delivery of those savings in relation to those projects on a monthly basis. Clearly, if we don't deliver our savings, then it puts pressure on the in-year budget, and ultimately we would need to use reserves to balance a budget if we weren't able to deliver the savings. But the whole point of having a transformation programme is to do so in such a way where we have a planned programme of delivery, which gives us a better chance of success.
Am I allowed to have a follow-up question? I promise this will be the last one on this paper. Are transformation projects at risk due to potential skills shortages internally? And is there any potential risks of redundancies within the council?
Nick.
So these projects and programmes don't involve the delivery of redundancies as far as I am aware. I don't think that's the case, and certainly our budget setting process didn't involve any compulsory redundancies as part of the process. In terms of skills, it is the case that in some parts of the project delivery that there is a lack of skills. There's a challenge in the market, and we do sometimes need to appoint agency staff in order to resource the delivery of a project. We are able to do that, so we are recruiting agency staff, and in some respects that can be helpful, because these are skills that sometimes we need on a short-term basis for a task that will then finish once the project is delivered, rather than recruiting permanent staff which we may not need at a later stage. So overall, there's a lot of work that's been done by Tara and the team to identify the resource that we need for each project and to allocate resource to those projects, which is actually really comprehensive work that's done. But that's not to say that we don't need to buy in resource for particular projects from time to time.
I'm so sorry. And just to confirm that agency staff that are hired, they fall within our living wage promise. Yeah?
Yes, they do. And I think what I'll also add on to that as well is the properties that are being identified for this process are properties that are no longer are being declared as surplus for requirements. And in some instances, what we're able to do is, by disposing of the property, we get the capital receipt. But also in many instances, it allows us to bring in a service that also saves us money, because they may be providing some supported service which actually reduce our costs as well. And therefore, by doing that, that then does free up the possibility for us to invest in those very things that you were mentioning, including the training of our own staff. Councillor Blenkinsop.
Thank you. Two questions, one of which is a little less significant, so I'll ask that one first, which is just in terms of the tackling homelessness and the temporary accommodation. And I don't know, this might be a slightly unfair question to ask here and now, but are we still planning, or are we planning further, I should say, use of council housing as a transfer to temporary accommodation? Because I remember that was something that came to us previously. I'm wondering if that is planned to continue.
Pete, are you able? Okay, I think I'll respond to that. I mean, we, like many councils, we are facing a massive subsidy loss due to temporary accommodation. So we are looking at all means possible to address that subsidy loss, and in some cases that does mean using general fund housing for temporary accommodation. We are also looking at other routes to address that. By reducing the subsidy loss, that then frees up funds to invest more in other areas, including providing more general fund housing. So in a way, we're trying to get ourselves into the position by tackling temporary accommodation that actually will then allow us to more sustainably deliver additional council housing and social housing for those people who are on the housing waiting list, for example.
I'll avoid being snide about the council housing situation, but to basically not ruling it out. If it works, it works. I think, is that unreasonable to characterise your position as, or?
I think what we're trying to do is solve a multifaceted problem without the ability to do everything at once. So we are prioritising some things in order to get to a stage where we can do the other things as well. Probably a good example of that would be, because of the situation with the state of our council housing, we've had to prioritise putting money into looking after our council housing and bringing it up to stock, up to standard, which otherwise we might have been able to use to do other things. Once we get into a situation where we're no longer under a C3 judgment, for example, where we're above the line with either C2 and our aim is to get C1, that will then allow us to put even more focus on doing some of the other things that we would all want to do, including ensuring that we deliver even more council housing.
I mean, I think we could talk a lot about the cost of that, but that was not the thrust of my question, and thank you for the answer. In terms of the other one, which was in relation more to the reserves, so require management for application of reserves on a short-term basis until all disposals can be facilitated to replenish the reserves. One is short-term basis, essentially the next financial year, or how long would we be carrying on a deficit with our reserves, how long that would be taken. And secondly, who from the council's side, would have oversight of that? Would that be the finance subcommittee? Would that be us in strategy and resources? Where do we have oversight of this?
Yeah, so we would need to replenish reserves fairly swiftly if we're talking about using the general reserve, because it provides us with our financial resilience position going forward. So we would pick it up as part of the budget setting cycle, and therefore it would go through the governance of the finance subcommittee as part of that process.
Thank you. So essentially we would be aiming to mitigate that by the next financial year. Okay, thank you very much.
Any more questions or? No. Okay, in that case, let me just. So I would like to move that the Committee for Strategy and Resources. Is this for noting or for? Yeah, apologies, I couldn't find the word I was looking for. So I would like to recommend that the Committee for Strategy and Resources, one, approve the funding envelope of 32.5 million to deliver the Change and Transformation Portfolio 2025-2026 through the Transformation Fund originally set out in the Bristol City Council budget report approved at full council in February 2025, and roll forward element of the Transformation Fund agreed as part of the Council Budget Report 2024-2025. 2. Note that the current total Transformation Fund available for 25-26 is 32.5 million. Of this, the Change and Transformation Portfolio in 25-26 is currently estimating 29.7 million. 3. Note the risk associated with the requirement for funding to be raised through the raising of capital receipts and the mitigation, should this risk materialise in the context of committed and planned expenditure, would require management through application of reserves on a short-term basis until the disposals can be facilitated to replenish the reserves. 4. Note that any request for funding based on FUCR will be subject to flexible use of capital receipts. I was going to say the acronym, then I realised what it might sound like when I saw what it spelled out. So note that any request for funding based on flexible use of capital receipts will be subject to alignment with the investor save principles. 5. Note the allocation to the current transformation programme business cases, AF, adult social care, transformation and improvement, families first, property and tackling homelessness, and initially earmarking of funding to the government programmes and projects that have been proposed for 25-26 but not yet started. 6. Note the Council's decision pathway process will be followed in relation to the individual key decisions for each programme project as required, with the Chief Executive Officer and Director of Finance in consultation with Executive Directors, Transformation Board, with the authority to approve business cases to the value greater than 500,000 and not impacting 2 or more wards, less than 500,000 and not impacting 2 or more wards. My apologies. Can I ask for a seconder for that motion?
Seconded.
Can I ask all those in favour to show their hands? That's unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item 10, update on the Council motion on the Council's communications retention policy. This report considers the Golden Motion passed by full Council on 10th of December 2024 relating to the Council's communications retention policy. In particular, it provides detail relating to the policies and procedures for data retention within the Council, the technical controls that the Council has in place, and the role of the Information Commissioner's Office. I would like to invite Ben Hewkin, Head of Information Assurance, to briefly outline the report. Ben.
Thanks, Chair. So just to summarise very quickly from me, that this report is obviously in response to the Golden Motion on the communication retention policy from November last year. The report's for noting, and the response sets out details the report responds to the motion in detail. Two further things that I'd like to add is before any changes are implemented, we'll send out a series of communications, guidance material and information to ensure that officers are able to move and save any required things before the 2 or 4 year retention period. And finally, just for me to say that the other local authorities and public sector entities have already implemented a retention on email, such as the Financial Conduct Authority are currently working to a 1 year period, Lincolnshire Council a 2 year period, and other local authorities I've spoken to are also in the process of implementing similar retention periods.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Do I have any comments or questions? We've got John, Zoe, and then Patrick.
Thanks, Chair. You're very popular, Ben. Thank you for the report. I wonder if you can help me with a little bit of the report. Page 117, you've put in there, currently we do not enforce a retention period on email. It is currently kept for as long as the member of staff is employed. So basically, when the member of staff leaves, the account closes. So if you try and email it, it bounces back. That's the front office. And colleagues who could easily access a colleague's emails obviously can't because that account is closed. That's the front office. That's absolutely correct. But I think the reason there's a bit of consternation, a bit of public forum comment is that, of course, that's not the whole picture, is it? Because I've had dealings with officers where we've had to get emails from 2 or 3 years ago. Now, the account's closed, so it's not easy to do, but IT can do it. So I'm not sure why it would be helpful, I think, to explain a little bit more, to make that sort of statement is that's the front office, but you're not telling us what the back office can do.
So based on our current configuration, the account is closed, as you said. 30 days later, that account is disabled. Then we've got a further 30 days after that where the emails can be retrieved. You have said that there are some instances where that may extend, but there's no guarantee that has happened. It's very hit and miss.
I don't think it's that hit and miss, actually, because every time we've needed to go back in time, IT, they're not very happy doing it because there's a lot of work involved. And I'm not suggesting we're going to do it for FOIs, because I think FOIs have to be proportionate and there's a cost and all the rest of it. But I think, we have to be careful with statements like that, because the reality is we have the means to go back many years, and many organisations use the same system. And in extremis, the IT department can go back quite a few years if required.
Yes, I think I did speak to IT colleagues last week in response to some of the public forum questions, but I don't know if Tim wants to add anything.
Thank you. I was very happy to confirm all the detail of this offline. I'm conscious I don't have technical colleagues with me. I think a key change in this has been the Council's move from its on-premises infrastructure to cloud-based infrastructure in recent years. So it's true to say when we hosted our own servers and all of the information was stored locally, there's things you can do to recover deleted items. And now we use all of Microsoft's cloud. There's a particular retention policy Microsoft has. So once a user is deleted and gone for good, I think as Ben said, it's 30 days, but then it is irretrievably removed by Microsoft and you cannot go and request reinstatement of that account or get access to the emails. And indeed, all of the backups, etc., are all handled through Microsoft ecosystem rather than within our own infrastructure or with a separate backup provider. So it will be quite different technically to try and recover items now than it may have been in the past. But very happy to get the chapter and verse. I've seen the Microsoft articles on it myself, so I know that to be the case. All of that notwithstanding, obviously, that there's always options to review the council's email estate. So just because somebody's left, those emails may be in other people's inboxes, copies, folders, etc. So again, there will still be activity that we can assist with in finding where email may still be within the live systems. Thanks, Tim.
Can I just follow up on that? So I guess the question here is in terms of if we're looking for emails from members of staff that has left, I'm assuming that the normal process is we will look at that person's email. But I think what you've just said is that sometimes, obviously, there's somebody else at the other end of that communication. So if the other person that's part of that communication is still with the council, we should still be able to get access to the email from their end rather than and I'll be able to do that if we're looking for the content.
Yes, if someone's still with the council and still has that email, we can absolutely get to that. I will have to absolutely double and triple check my facts in terms of if somebody is an active current member of staff that has deleted the email. I'll just double check the retention policy on that.
I guess the other side of it, sorry John for jumping on your questions, is the difference between us having a policy that we can guarantee to be able to deliver on, but there may be instances where we can go beyond that, but we can't guarantee that we can go beyond that. Is that?
Yes, I think that's the case. But as I say, the key thing in terms of when someone's gone and an account is deleted, that's when 30 days after that it becomes absolutely irretrievable from within that account.
And that's because of Microsoft's policy rather than...
Correct.
Right, okay. Thank you. Zoe.
In the interest of saving all of your time, I'm just going to quick fire my questions and then whoever wants to answer them can. So first off, will the audit include random sampling across departments or only the policy compliance? Number 2 is what KPIs will be used to measure success of cultural and procedural improvements? Number 3 is should we have freedom of information request training be mandatory across all staff who handle information? And then lastly, is there a risk that the underfunding of the records management service could limit the archive effectiveness?
Who wants to take on which question? Ben?
Yeah, so I think most of those are for me. Can we just go through them? First one, sorry.
So I'll start with the first one, which was, will the audit include random sampling across departments or only policy compliance?
So I can get that included when I speak with the colleagues from audit to scope that. They've not approached me with the detail of the audit yet, so we can look to include that.
What KPIs will be used to measure success of the cultural and procedural improvements?
So again, that's something I'll speak with our adoption and change management team. So when we do part of the comms and guidance, we can look to speak to them about how we measure success.
Is it possible that we can have FOI training be mandatory for all staff who handle information?
So we do have training on our e-learning platform for FOIs for all staff that do answer FOIs. It's not currently mandatory, but it is something that we could look at for those that do answer FOIs.
Cool. And last one is there a risk that underfunding the records management service could limit archive effectiveness?
If we're talking about archiving, that's not something that sits within me, so I'll take that away and speak to the archives team.
Thank you.
Okay, I've Heather next.
Yeah, this is interesting because it's a report about concerns of how we are storing things, and especially around email, and then it's been used to talk about a plan to retain emails for less time. But this isn't the decision point for that, I don't think. It's just there is a proposal that we will store emails for less time. So I guess it doesn't feel like an opportune time to be bringing that in, because the theme of this is very much a concern about how easy is it to access and be open with the information. I guess there's the transparency, there's also the ways in which having access to emails helps our work. And I know that you've said that councillors could have it for 4 years. I'm not sure why councillors, other than maybe lower expectation of us being organised and being able to save all the emails that we might need in 4 years' time, which I'll totally take that. But I don't quite understand why we would get 4 years and other staff to get 2 years. I certainly look back on emails constantly to help organise my work and see a record of something, and I'm not sure that we could go for a process to save it somewhere else helps us organise our work. So I know this isn't where we're making that decision, but I certainly have concerns about that. And then just whilst I've got the mic, I would just comment on the cultivating a culture of openness, cooperation, and data disclosure. I think that there has been a culture for a number of years, I'm going to say a political culture of how transparent and open we wished to be, that I would like to change, because I think that it creates more problems than it solves. So I certainly, in the way that I operate, would like to cultivate that culture of openness, and I hope that that can spread in the council.
Patrick?
Thank you. I seem to be saying this a lot this afternoon, but to follow on from that point, on the point about councillor email retention specifically, I don't really see why it would be only 4 years to cover their period in office. If it's going to be determined by the period in office, it should be the whole period across, however many elections and electoral terms councillors serve. Partly to have that record of casework and so on for residents, because I think that is a slightly different concern than a lot of other systems in the council where there's customer relationship management software that the council officers will be able to access. But also in terms of for FOIs for elected members, which can often stretch back over the whole time they were elected, not just their current term. And given the only 70 councillors in an organisation of 6,500 employees, he says questioningly, that's hopefully not too large of a data burden for our server costs. I think as well the phrase of email's not a record storage system, which is coming up in different permutations a lot in this report. It does overlook the fact that many people in the authority do use to such. That might not be ideal, that might not be recommended, but it is how it works in practice, and especially again with elected members. People often have less experience with things, the cloud storage, less trust of it, less familiarity with alternatives to email, and I will say as a practical recommendation, maybe the lack of direct access councillors and elected members have to the casework management software that is used is a real issue, I think, that creates an incentive to stay on email, because that's our only interaction with caseworking systems. If that could be addressed and maybe moved on, maybe we can have access to a CRM that would help streamline this. Maybe that would be a better way to retain that data and access it going forwards. But I think this report does overlook in general that this email is used as a record storage system in a lot of cases, particularly for elected members. I'm very grateful to the work you and your team are doing and for bringing this report and progressing the motion, but I think we need to have a bit more emphasis on how things are rather than how we'd like them to be.
Thanks.
Sorry.
So just to address the point around, I think I agree there is a culture shift that needs to happen, and that's going to be part of that guidance and training around where things should be stored. So to answer your point around, people do use email, but there are more appropriate places that they should be storing them. And just to answer your point from a council perspective, I have been in conversation with the party group leaders around a case management system for councillors, which should hopefully address part of this.
Tom.
So I will follow on from Councillor McAllister in his footsteps on that one by, again, agreeing with his point on getting a CRM or a casework system, because I have had the opportunity to use one of these now for my day-to-day, and it is infinitely more usable than the council system. I think it would be a big boon to us organisationally across the council. I am slightly wary of the data burden of retaining, say, 20 years of councillor emails, but I think some provision for, say, if we had another situation like COVID, elections were delayed, some flexibility on this might be desirable. Last point is less of a question, but more in a relation to Councillor Mack's point, and I think we would all like to see more of a culture of honesty and openness and transparency. We all unanimously back this motion. I would just gently note, for example, certain instances like 92 million's worth of council housing being directed to a housing association in a manner this committee did not have eyesight on. I would suggest that there is room for us all to improve on this one, and I'm really glad to see this come forward.
Thank you, Tom. Any comments? Sarah?
Thank you. Yeah, I also kind of wanted to raise a point about the sort of 4-year retention for councillors. I know that for a lot of us, decisions and issues in our wards can sometimes span multiple terms, and we quite often do need to sort of retain access to the information that has happened, 10 years ago. Certainly there are ongoing issues in our ward. With regards to, we talk a lot about the kind of timings and where things are being stored. But do we feel confident that we understand culturally in the council what information should be stored and what is okay to delete? Are we confident that our staff and anyone who retains information is actually trained on that? And is that an area that we will also be looking at with regards to this work?
So to answer the first point around the council email, the retention, that's something we can look at, and if there's a note in the report that will bring an update back in 6 months, so that's something we can look at there. And I think that's also something we can tie into the CRM. I think that might be something we can look at to both of those. And again, in terms of the training, yes, it is something we will need to support staff on to ensure that those staff do know the sort of things that should be stored and where they should be stored appropriately.
And just a sort of final point about when we do have when we have done this piece of work, I think communication will also be a really big part of this. Being able to communicate to our residents, what we are doing, what information they are able to access as part of things like the FOI, SAR process, and ensuring that people don't feel like they're being shut out of accessing information that they have a right to. So I think that really should be a big part of this work, and ensuring part of the transparency is that we are actively communicating with people who may want to access information they have a right to access.
Thank you. Before I come to Zoe, I think one of the things I'm picking up from this is, and my thanks to Councillor de Gil-Andrews for prompting this, is when we put a policy together, there's a difference between what we can guarantee to do, but there may be instances where we can go above and beyond that in our efforts to be more open and transparent. And what I would hope is that if we do set up a policy that recognises the limitations of the software that we're using, we don't necessarily use that as a reason for not seeing if we can go beyond. And I think the other part of it as well is in terms of handling freedom of information requests, for instance, is that maybe we need to look more closely at how we are facilitating that in terms of helping people to be more clear about what their requests are and what the information is that they want to get, because I think we do sometimes get in a situation where it becomes very combative between the council and the residents, and we do want to get beyond that onto a different level. So that would be my only comments, is that we don't allow the limitations to software to limit our ability to answer questions if there are other routes that we can take to be able to answer those questions, even if it isn't something we can guarantee will be 100% successful every time. Zoe, you had a question?
Yeah. So I think It's not just about having these processes here. The residents of Bristol want to know that there is accountability. Now, if it was any other kind of employer, you know, if someone was to mishandle data, they would go through a disciplinary procedure, they might get a warning or a final written warning, or maybe even be dismissed. However, that's fundamentally different when you're dealing with elected representatives. So what are we going to do to make sure that councillors are held accountable?
Obviously, councillors have to comply with their code of conduct, which includes provisions around transparency, the appropriate use of information. I would remind councillors that they are subject to the same legal requirements as officers when it comes to access to information as well. So there's a whole legal regime that sits around the responsibility of councillors that is not dissimilar to that which relates to officers. But you know, my door is open, as is that of others. If individual councillors need advice on, you know, the appropriate use of information, whether it can be shared or whether it should be treated as confidential or otherwise. So please avail yourself of that if you have any you know, concerns on an individual basis.
Councillor McAllister.
Thank you, Chair. I think that the general themes that I'm certainly picking up from the committee is that councillors don't want their emails deleted. I think we'll probably welcome some training on how to best comply with data laws, FOI laws, and so on. I know that this is a rolling thing, but it would be good to have a refresher on that. So I'd certainly welcome that. I've forgotten the third point, but I think we seem to be of an accord on a lot of those 2 points, certainly.
Okay, thank you. Do I have any more comments or questions? Okay, on that then, I'll ask the committee if they can note the matters highlighted in this report. Ian, taking notes of our comments to feed back into that. So can I take that report as noted? Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item 11, which is internet connectivity contract procurement for 2026-27 to 2031-32. This report identifies the requirement to replace the Council's current contract for internet connectivity, which comes to an end in March 2026, and seeks permission to do this. The proposal will ensure seamless continuation of internet connectivity and removes any risk of breaching procurement regulations that would arise if the Council was not able to award a compliant contract in good time. This is a key decision as it involves spend over £500. I would like to invite Chidama Ahmadi, the Infrastructure Service Manager, to briefly outline the report. And my apologies if I just mangled your first name.
Hello, it's okay. Thank you. So this report is about procuring internet connectivity. We've had this contract with the current supplier for over 10 years because we didn't have the structure to support the new internet services provided. But currently, we would like to follow due process by going through a proper tender and procure internet connectivity for our corporate sites and schools as well. The costs would be managed by the council and then the school as well. So we tend to get this contract for a period of 5 years +1 at a stable price. So that's why we're going ahead of time. It's like a proactive measure to help us get a stable price in the markets. That's regarding internet connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Blenkinsop.
Sorry. This is a small one, which is the increased spending on site resilience, which sounds very good, but I wanted to have a little bit more detail on what that would look like.
Sorry, Tom,
So
please.
it's point number 6 of the paper on page 124. It's got, yes, additionally allowances made for site additions, moves and changes, increased spending on site resilience. And I wanted to know what that looked like.
Sorry, not enough microphones. So really we're looking to have a little bit of flexibility in the contract because we know that there are sites coming in and out. So where we talk about site resilience, that may be multiple routes into sites. So at the moment, for example, if we have a cable disconnection somewhere, it can cut a site off and we'd want multiple routes in. There are other sites where we have limited fallback options. So for example, places that don't have good mobile signal and may therefore need sort of satellite link as a backup if the main cable connection goes down. So it's about making sure that all sites have that level of resilience and a fallback option available to them.
And we think we will be able to achieve all sites having that level of fallback and resilience at a maximum spend of 420,000 a year.
Yes, we should be able to achieve that.
Well, I look forward to it. Very good if we can manage that.
Thank you, Tom. Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. I noted that we have previously been tied into a contract with Virgin Media Business because the services we required relied on technology which only they could maintain, if I've understood that correctly. What risk are we at of this situation happening again at the end of this round of procurement if we say we award to BT or whoever it is, and then are we going to risk having to extend with them again at unpreferential rates potentially because only they can run our infrastructure again?
At the moment, we could take on any supplier. So that's why we're taking this proactive measure to, get other vendors to tender for the internet connectivity. And the price you're seeing is as a result of the soft market that was conducted by different vendors who gave proposals as to how they will get this done. And one of the reasons we're starting now is just in case we get the approval, there are many hurdles to actually get the vendor to bring their services in. So those hurdles we need time to get them sorted, because of how big and how vast we have to cover with the internet connection.
Just to add briefly around the point about, I guess, future-proofing here. The reason we were where we were is we had a very outdated network set up at the council. We also were relying on copper in some cases, copper technology. So part of that is the fact that became a stop sell, so other providers wouldn't sell it to you anymore. So we could just continue with who we had. So the odds of that being a problem again in 7 years very unlikely. We're just putting in all of the council's new network equipment this year, and then we're moving on to a sort of rolling refresh of equipment rather than trying to sort of avoid that big bang of going obsolete and having to catch up again. So I think we'll be keeping our options open.
Thank you. That's very reassuring.
Any more questions or comments? Zoe?
What criteria will be used to assess bids beyond cost?
Assessing beyond cost, quality.
Okay, beyond cost, we're also looking at quality and availability. Some of them have also proposed to give us backup plans and other stuff. So it's when we go to tender, we really look at, because we have points, requirements, non-requirement functions and requirement functions that we will score them against to able to award the contract to whoever wins it.
One last question, which is, would the contract allow for bandwidth increases in high-need locations, such as in areas where there's a more disproportionate amount of lower economic standing, or places which have higher needs, such as, SEND schools and community hubs? Will we be allowed to have higher bandwidth in those areas?
before we did the soft market, we had to, access all the, what I call them, sites where we have to deploy this internet. And then we came up with it, which we, push forward for, vendors to tell us how much they would actually use to supply this internet connection. So all those considerations have been put in place regarding bandwidth. You're welcome.
Any more comments or questions? Okay, thank you. I would like to propose that the Committee for Strategy and Resources, 1, authorize the Director of Policy, Strategy and Digital, in consultation with myself as Chair of the Strategy and Resources Committee, to procure and award a 5+1+1 year internet connectivity contract in line with the procurement routes and maximum budget envelope outlined in this report. 2, authorises the Director of Policy, Strategy and Digital to invoke any subsequent extensions or variations specifically defined in the contract being awarded up to the maximum budget envelope outlined in this report. And 3, authorises the Head of Procurement and Contract Management to approve appropriate procurement route to market if changes to procurement routes are subsequently required. Can I ask for a seconder for that motion?
Seconded.
Thank you, Sarah. All those in favour, please show your hands. That's unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 13 is an exempt item. I'm assuming that members of the committee will have questions that they want to ask within the exempt session. So I am going to move the following resolution regarding the exclusion of press and public. So I would like to move that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the next item of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A of the Act. Can I ask for a seconder?
Seconded.
Chair, can I just have a quick point of order on that, please?
So
I just want it noted in the minutes that the Labour group has made the point in both private and public meetings that we feel that the names of these buildings should be disclosed to the public, especially when they're of particular social or cultural value, so that the public has the opportunity to put in statements and questions and that we can then represent their views and hear them. So we just wanted that noted that we have asked for that, and we're a bit disappointed that it hasn't been forthcoming. Thank you.
Okay, that'll be noted by Ian. So can we have a vote on the decision to exclude the press and public? All those in favour, please show your eyes. The hands, rather. Those against, please raise your hands. Abstentions? Okay, so I've miscounted. I didn't see your hand go up high enough, Tom. So did you vote in favour? Okay, so that was unanimous. Okay. Rather than excluding the press and public, we're actually going to exclude ourselves by moving to another room, which is 1P06.